Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. This video is for part 8 of the TLC blanket. In part 8 we're going to be working with two colors at the same time. And this is a very versatile technique if you master this, because that really opens the door to a lot of color work for you. The yarn that I'm using this week is still my Chunky Monkey yarn from my yarn kit. And this week you need both your hooks, the 5mm hook and the 6.5mm hook. Because we're also going to be working a border around our blanket. So we're really going to be putting the finishing touches to our blanket this week. I'll take you step by step through the process of working with two color yarns. I'll give you tips along the way, how to change colors and all of that. And of course also with working the border, I'll give you tips and show you how to do that. So let's get started on part 8 of the TLC blanket. Row 65. At this point you have the right side facing, so the side with the popcorns. And we're going to come to the very first stitch and attach color A in the first stitch. Now the first stitch is going to be a chain 3 from the previous row. So here on the top of that chain 3, just insert your hook and attach with a slip stitch. Going to work a chain 3, which again counts as a double crochet, and now we're going to work 4 more doubles. So this is 1, oh dear, there we go again, 2, 3. And now the last stitch here, we're going to be changing colors. So I'm going to start the stitch, yarn over, insert into the next stitch, pick up my loop, take off 2 loops. Now I have 2 loops left on my hook. Now at this point I'm going to take color B. I just need the starting end. Here we go. This is color B. Now I'm going to do the taking off the last 2 loops with this color. So take up color B and take off those last 2 loops. Now I have color B on my hook. We're now going to work 5 double crochets with color B. And while we do that, you're going to have color A here. You're going to hold it to the back at the bottom of where you're working. So that's actually the top of the stitches from the previous row. So you're going to hold it here to the back there, and you're going to work over that thread. So yarn over for the on color B, then insert into your next stitch and over yarn from color A and complete the stitch. So 1, 2, here's 3, so I'm still working over that thread. 3, here's 4, and now again I'm going to work stitch number 5, and then I'm going to change back to color A. So yarn over, so I'm still working the first part, working over yarn A, take off 2 loops in color B, and now change to color A, so pick up the second yarn and take off those last 2 loops with color A. So now you have yarn A on your hook and yarn B is here at the bottom. Now I'm going to do the same, work 5 stitches in color A and keep color B to the back. Over, so in the next stitch, keeping color B to the bottom, work over it. That's 1. Here also you see, it's 2, 3, this here is 4, the last one here is 5, so I'm again working over yarn B, take off 2 loops. But now again I'm going to swap back to color B. And this point is exactly the same as that point there, where we changed to color B for the first time. So these 10 stitches, you're going to repeat this to the end. I'll show you the repeat once more. Just need to shift my work. It's getting hard to get everything in front of the camera. So yarn over in color B. That's 1, 2, working over the thread, keeping it to the back and covering it. It's like an extra loop from the stitch. It's like your stitch has 3 loops instead of 2. This is double crochet number 4. And here comes number 5. And now again we change colors on the last yarn over. And there we go. Now you're at the same point as you were here. So 5 double crochets in color B. A. So that's 1. And again working over and covering the second thread. And this second thread is called your carrying yarn, because you're carrying it with you. And yes, I need one more. So every time it's 5 stitches in the one color and then 5 stitches in the other. There we go. And again, the start of the repeat, same as that point there, same as that point there. Repeat this to the end, it'll work out exactly. I'll see you for the last repeat because I want to show you how to carry your yarn up to the next row. I'm almost to the end. You see here I've done pink stitches, I've done 5 white stitches, and now I need to do 5 pink and 5 white again. So I'm going to, so this is the last repeat. I'm going to work the pink stitches. 1, 2, and again take the yarn with you, your main color. Don't pull on the yarn, don't yank it in any way, just relax, take it with you. So this carrying yarn, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the last stitch, 5. And now I'm going to change to color A. Color B you don't need anymore, you can cut this off and just leave it here to the back. Now I've got 5 more stitches in color A to do. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and now comes the last stitch, and this is 5. This is, there you go, on the last stitch from the previous round, and I've already worked away the yarn tail, so that takes a bit more effort. And on my last yarn over, I'm going to change to a new color again, and the color that we need is color C from your kit. It's a slightly darker pink, color C. So yarn over and take off with color C. And now I have again 2 threads attached. Turn your work, and in the next row we're going to start with color C. Row 66. You have the wrong side of your work facing. You can see here the threads that you took with you. You can see them clearer here on the back of your work. We're going to do the same idea, but this time we're going to keep the yarn that we're carrying to the well, to the front of our work. This is of course the wrong side, so that means it'll be to the back. But the idea is going to be the same. Currently you have color C on your hook. I'm just going to pull this a bit tighter. There we go. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This is your first double. And now in the next 4 stitches, I'm going to work a double crochet and then carry yarn A with you. So this is the yarn tail from color C. I'm going to keep this one out of the way. Actually, I want to do it on this side, then it's more out of the way. There we go. And then I'm going to bring yarn A up, and then we're going to work over it in this way. So yarn over on color C, I believe. And then I'm actually just going to scoop yarn A and then come to the second stitch and then pull it slightly tight and work over it. There you go. And now you've got yarn A. You see it goes here a little bit with a curve, and now you've got it nicely, and now it's easier to take it with you. So that was one. And because it's on the, it's important that your carrying yarn is now on the front of your stitches, because you want to have it hidden. That's 2. This here is 3. And then the last one here is going to be 4. And now again I'm going to change colors. So pick up yarn A, and take off those last 2 loops. Color C, make sure again it's to the front of your work, because we're going to be working over it and you want it on the wrong side after all. Yarn over. So I kind of, this one I just tend to hook over and under. So 1, so then kind of under this yarn tail that I'm carrying with me, carrying yarn. 2, and keep pulling this yarn tail down, or not pulling it. You don't want to pull the yarn, you want to keep it steady. You don't want to change it in tension. But you have to keep motivating it to stay on the wrong side, because it'll be wanting to go to the other side all the time. So you really have to motivate it and keep your finger on it to keep it on this side. You can see it here. Here's that carrying yarn. And from the other side, you might see it slightly. That's almost inevitable. But if you see it mostly here to the back, it'll be less visible on the other side. And then change to color C again. Repeat with the other color combination. And I just need I've got my yarn twisted here. That happens. That happens. There's almost nothing. You can prevent it if you really keep track of what's the front and the back and everything, but I never do, and at a certain point everything is just a little twisted. So yarn over, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's the last one, 5, and again change to color A. And again, this point now is the same as that point there, so this you're going to repeat to the end. I'll show you the repeat once more, and then I'll see you at the end again. So yarn over, make sure your carrying yarn is to the front, and really hold your finger onto this yarn as you're making the stitches so it doesn't flop to the other side, because you want this yarn at the back as much as possible. This is 4. Here's the last one. This is 5. And now you change colors again. And then 5 stitches in color C. That's 1. I'm holding this yarn with my thumb into place. 2, 3, and this is 4, and here the last one, 5, and now we swap back. Then I repeat twice with you. Do this until the end. I'll see you for the last repeat as well, again to carry yarn and up and all of that. Work this up until the end. Last repeat to do. So I'm just going to work over color C with color A. That's 2. And this is all still in the same way as before. 3, keeping a hold of this carrying yarn with my thumb that it doesn't go over to the other side. This is the last stitch in color A. It's going to swap over to color C. And now we're going to work 5 stitches in color C, but we're actually only going to work over 4 stitches, not over 5 with the carrying yarn. I'll show you in a moment. So this here is 3, and then this is 4. And now I'm not going to work over the carrying yarn for the last stitch. So the last stitch is only, so it's in a turning chain 3 anyway, but it's only in the stitch, so it's not over the carrying yarn. And now I'm going to change colors, and now I bring the carrying yarn up. Now I have color A on my hook again, and at this point you can cut color C, because we're going to continue again with color A in the next row. Row 67 is in essence the same as row 65. The only difference is the second color we're going to be using. We're going to use color F for this round. I'll just get you started. We start again with a chain 3, and then on the first 4 stitches work a double. 1, 2, 3, and this here is number 4. And now we're going to change colors, and we're going to change colors to color F. That's for me the very dark pink. And do the last yarn off with this new color. Now we start the repeat again, where we're going to be taking yarn with us. So working over yarn A. You see, I'm keeping it to the back of your work. Work the 5 doubles. 2. Keeping it to the back. 3, 4, and this is the last one here, 5. That means on the last yarn over, we're again going to change back to yarn A. There we go. And now 5 double crochets in yarn A. Working over yarn F, keeping it to the back. And again, with that yarn that you're taking with you, don't pull on it, don't give it too much slack either. Just hold it against your work and work over it. because if you pull it, your work will ripple, and if you give it too much slack, your work will ripple as well. So just hold it to the back and just with its natural tension. And after 5 double crochets in color A, change back to color F. And this point is of course the same as that point. So at this stretch, you're going to do this until the end, and I'll show you the last bit again, but it is the same as 2 rows before. Almost to the end of the row again. I have one more repeat to do. So I first work 5 stitches in color F, 2, 3, this is 4, still working over yarn A, this here is the last one, 5, and now I'm going to change to color A, and then I can cut yarn F, so I'm going to, there we go, then I can just hold this to the back. Now I have 5 more stitches to do in color A. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last one here is on the turning chain 3, so I'm just going to insert my hook in there. And now we need to change colors again, and the color that we're going to change to is color E, which I just need to find. Here it is, color E. So I'm going to yarn over in the new color. There we go. And then you're all set for the next row coming back. Row 68. You have the wrong side of your work facing, and this row is in essence again the same as 2 rows before, only the difference is the colors that you're using. I'll get you started on this row as well. With color E, make a chain 3. This chain 3 counts as your first double crochet. Now going to work 4 more doubles, and in the process bring up yarn A. So yarn over, I'm just going to scoop yarn A and then come to the second stitch, hold on to that a little bit, and then complete that double crochet. That's 1, and here, and now make sure that your carrying yarn remains in front of your work. 2, this is 3, and the last one, the 4th one, with the chain 3 here is 5. And now we're going to change colors to color A. There we go. And this also starts the new repeat unit. So 5 double crochets in color A, and being sure that your carrying yarn remains to the front so that you don't see it on the other side. So you're keeping it here on the front of the stitches, and really do keep your finger on it because it'll be wanting to roll over to the other side all the time. 3 and 4, and then this is the last one here. 5, and now change colors. Go to color E, and now we're going to do the same, working 5 doubles and keeping yarn A here in front of the stitches. And I find that this technique with working over 2 colors where you have to keep the yarn to the front is just slightly more difficult and a bit more, like I say, you really have to mind this yarn, the carrying yarn, much more than if you keep it to the back. And this is the last one. And change colors. these 10 stitches, repeat this to the end. I'll see you at the end again for taking up yarn A, but as such repeat this to the end. Almost to the end of the row again. I have one more repeat that I'd like to show you. Last repeat, so I need to work 5 stitches in color A. Again, still keeping that carrying yarn to the front here. 3, this is 4, and the last one here, 5, and then I swap colors to color E. There we go. And now again, we're only going to work over the first 4 stitches. We're going to take the second yarn with us, and then we're going to change colors, and then we're going to bring it up. So 1, 2, 3, and here's the last one, 4. Now for stitch number 5, do not work over your carrying yarn, so only in the chain 3 here. So insert your hook in there. Oh, that's not exactly where I wanted it. And sometimes it does require a bit of wiggling. There we go. And then on the last 2 loops, I'm going to take up carrying yarn. There we go. At this point you can cut yarn E and turn your work, because we're going to come back and work a new row. For row 66, that's this row here, I've already worked it. You're going to repeat what you've done 2 rows down and 4 rows down. So it's in essence exactly the same. The only difference is the color you're using. The color you're going to use is color D and A, and then alternating them again. So for this round I encourage you to use the written pattern, and if that is just a bit tricky, go back 2 rows and use the video row for that, or the very first row. That's also good because they're the same on both. So for row 69, repeat row 67 or 65, but use color D. Row 70, this is the last row in which you're going to be working with 2 colors, and this row is again the same as 2 rows down and 2 rows down. So again, I refer you to the written pattern, see if you can work with the pattern, and otherwise go to the video round for row 68 I should say, or 66. You're going to use color B and color A for this row. And again, you have the wrong side facing, and work your last row of 2 colored stitches. Row 71, you have the right side facing, and you have color A on your hook. I'm going to start with a chain 3, and now this is a great snooze round, a double crochet on every stitch, so that counts as the first one, the chain 3. So go to your second stitch, work a double, and work a double crochet on every stitch till you're to the other side. And at that point we're just going to put the stitch marker in the loop again and work away yarn tails. So for the moment, continue work a double crochet on every stitch till you're to the other side. And almost to the end of the row, I have a few more stitches left. Just happily working those last few stitches because the blanket really is almost done. And the last one here is in a turning chain. At this point, secure this loop. Put a stitch marker in this loop. We'll pick it up in a moment again, because the first thing is to work away yarn tails. If we just look at the yarn tails we have right now, this point, work these away before we do the border, because otherwise they're just going to be all here in the way when you're working, especially here along the edge. They're going to be in the way. So use what you've already learned to work away yarn tails to work these away. So for example, this one here, work this away in its own color, and this one in its own color. So that way you can get them as invisible as you possibly can. So spend a moment to work away these yarn tails on this side and the other side, and then we can do the border. I'm going to start with the border. I'm going to pick up the loop that we secured with the stitch marker, and the hook size you're going to use for this round is your 6.5mm hook. The reason for using a larger hook is that then you just have a bit more stretch on your stitches, and that's actually a good thing for that first border round. I'm going to start with the chain 1. This is not a stitch. Then in the last stitch we worked, so in that stitch there, I'm going to work 3 single crochets, and you're going to have to like just turn your hook a little weird to get into that stitch, because you're kind of working backwards. So it's 1, 2, and this here is 3. So working 3 single crochets in there. And you're going to mark the second of the 3 stitches, because this is your new corner stitch, and it's just easier if you mark that stitch for the next round. So in the second of the 3, you're now going to rotate your work 90 degrees, and you're going to have the long edge facing, and on this long edge you're going to work 105 single crochets. Now that is not an exact science, because it depends on many things exactly where you place your stitches. The point is you want to evenly distribute 105 single crochets. Now I'm going to start by giving you just a few tips on how to do that, and for that I just need to swap my blanket around. Now I have here the full long side. I'm just going to open up my working loop. I have here as much of the full length of the blanket as I can show you. Now for these 105 stitches, we're going to start by, I'm going to divide the blanket into 4 parts, because then I know roughly every part should have 25 or 26 stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold my blanket in half. And like I said, this is not an exact science, this is approximation. And then I'm just going to put a stitch marker at the halfway point, which happens to be here in the square. And then I'm going to fold it in half again, so to mark the quarters. And I'm going to place a stitch marker in here. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So here, the halfway point is roughly here. Like I said, this is not exact, this is approximately, so that you have a few, just a few calibration points, basically, a few checkpoints along the way. So between the markers, the idea is to work about 25 or 26 stitches. So from here to here, you're going to work about 26, and then to this point about 26. And actually this point here is easy, because here you can just work into the sides of the square, so you can just work into these stitches normally. How to work along these edges. Now, like I said, that's not an exact science, and I'm going to show you how I do that. But this really is a matter of discretion where exactly you place those stitches, because you know, a few millimeters left or right, it's not that critical. What is important is that you have 105 stitches at the end of the day. That's important, because that determines how flexible your blanket is. If you have too few stitches, it's going to be too tight. So I've now made a few stitch markers, and I'm going to swap my blanket around again so I can actually crochet on it. So to work stitches along this edge, what we're going to do is you're going to make basically an estimate of where to place your stitches. For example, this stitch here, I'm just going to go into that little loop there and make a stitch. So that's my first single And then the next one, okay, I'm going to insert that here into the base of the stitch. That's, for example, 2. And now I'm going to come again to this point, and here I'm going to place number 3. And because you have a slightly larger hook than you used for these stitches, you might want to here and there you'll really have to poke your hook in. And now I'm going to make it here around the edge there. And this one I'm going to do as well, like that. Just going to work around it. See, sometimes I think, okay, I'll work into the stitch, sometimes I work around a post, sometimes I work into the bottom and the top of the stitch. The point is you want to keep your distances between the stitches roughly even. That'll help your tension, and at the same time make sure that you have enough stitches, because you see here's my first marker. So between here and where I started, I want about 26 stitches or so. And do not worry if you get here and you have too many or too few. Don't feel bad about that. That's normal. Then you rip this out and you do it again, and you do more or less stitches as needed. I also do this, and I do that a lot because it's really hard to get your stitch count correct the first time round. So and that's why these markers are there to help you, so that you don't get to the end and then say, oh dear, I need to do 20 more stitches and I don't have any room. So I also, this process to me involves doing it at least twice, sometimes even 3 or 4 times. And I'm just, and really this is just making an estimate of where to place those stitches. Because you see here, it's just, a guesstimate is a big word, but you got to make your best effort here, and it's not an exact science. So just take this one stitch at a time and think, okay, where am I going to place that stitch? Where does it look neat? Because that's what you're going for. You want it to look neat and tidy, and as pretty as possible. And next one I'm going to place here, and then I'm just going to continue like this until I'm to the end, when I'll have 105, and keep counting these stitches. And use your checkpoints to help you with that counting process, and just insert your stitch everywhere as you go. And when you get here to the square, you can actually work into this chain space directly into these stitches and the chain space, and that will help you. So this is actually a very this is an easier stretch, because here you can just literally work into those chain spaces and stitches. But here, yeah, this is just a bit more tricky, and this is perhaps one of the most difficult things we're going to do on this blanket. So continue until you're to the end of this row, or this row, this side I should say, and then you'll have 105 single crochets worked. I'm now at the end of the first edge, and here's the next corner, and this is actually the very first chain stitch we made. I still have my yarn tail on there. And then in that very first chain, you're going to work 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3 singles. And again, I'm just going to grab a stitch marker. Mark the second of those 3 singles, because this is again a corner stitch, that second of the 3 single crochets. Now I'm going to rotate your work again by 90 degrees, and now you're going to work into the bottom chain here. You're going to work 143 single crochets, and that'll bring you again to the other side, and you'll have 1 stitch left. So if you look here at the base chain, you see here's the single crochets you made, and actually just above that single crochet you can work into the chain. So you're working into the chain from the other side, and you're going to work 145 of these single crochets, sorry, 143, because the very first stitch contains your corner and the very last stitch will contain another corner. So it's 143 single crochets, and just You'll notice that the chains look a bit funny. That's because you're at the bottom, but you can work into them without too much difficulty, I hope. So work 143 single crochets, which will bring you to the other side of this of the short edge. Almost to the end of the row. I have 2 stitches left, this stitch and that stitch. So this is the last single crochet that I'm working. Now I've got here my very last stitch, that one there. In this last stitch, you're going to work 3 single crochets. 2 and 3. There we go. So in that very last stitch, and you're again going to mark the second stitch with the stitch marker. Nice flower. And yep, there you go. So mark the second of those 3 stitches, and this is again your new corner. Rotate your work again 90 degrees, and now you again have your long edge facing. On this long edge you're going to do exactly the same as on the other side. That means 105 single crochets evenly distributed. I suggest you do it in the same way, so divide your fabric into 4 pieces and then work about 26 stitches on each segment. So on this edge, repeat what you did on the other side and work 105 single crochets. So I've worked 105 single crochets, and now I'm at the next corner again, and this is again one of the long sides of your blanket. This is actually the last round that we worked, the last row that we worked, see? In the very first stitch, that's the chain 3, there at the top, I'm going to work 3 single crochets, and I just want to, well, I can't seem to get into the stitch, so I'm just going to work around it, that's also fine. 2, 3 single crochets, and then I'm going to mark the second one of the 3 that I just worked. I'm going to mark again with the stitch marker, because that's again my new corner there. Now along the last edge here, going to work 143 single crochets, and that's just 1 on every stitch. And then we're going to close with a slip stitch. So in your last edge, this edge is easy peasy because you've done all the hard work already along those short edges. So 143 single crochets, 1 on every stitch, till you're to the point where we started. I'm almost round. 3 stitches left. So on those last 3 stitches, I'll work a single crochet on each. 3. And now we're going to close on the first stitch, that's that first single crochet, with a slip stitch. So insert in that stitch, and it's a little, there we go, insert into that stitch and close with a slip stitch. And now we have only 1 round left to go. Round 2 of the border, I'm going to start by changing hook sizes. So you're going to change back to your 5mm hook. There you go. And now you're going to slip stitch 1 position to the marked stitch. And a chain 2. 1, 2. And now you're ready to start your repeat unit. What we're going to do is in every marked stitch you work 5 half doubles, and on all the other stitches you work 1 half double on every stitch. So that means I'm now in the marked stitch, so I'm going to work 5 half doubles. That's 1, 2, and you can actually remove the stitch marker already, then it's not in the way as much. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. There you go. So 5 half doubles in that stitch, and that also fills out your corner very nicely. Then you rotate your work 90 degrees, and you're going to come along this edge and work a half double on every stitch. Quite simple until you're to your next, see this is the first stitch, until you're to your next marked stitch, and then you work 5 half doubles in that stitch, and like that you're going to go all the way round. So work a half double on every stitch, and when you get to a marked stitch you're going to work 5 half doubles in that, and then you can also remove all your stitch markers. Go all the way around. I'm sure you can do this round without me, and when you're here I'm going to show you how to close with an invisible join again, because that will really finish off your blanket. When you've gone all the way around, the last thing to do is work away this stitch in such a way that you can't see this join. So we're going to be doing an invisible join. You've done this before, but I'll show you again. I'm going to finish by opening up this loop, and then thread your yarn tail on your needle. Now to work away this yarn tail, we're going to come to the first stitch after the chain. So here was the chain. Just going to come to the first stitch. It's actually going to be the easiest. Just go push through there, and then come back to the last stitch worked. And I also like to just pick up that loop there as well, and then pull through, and then pull until your stitch that you're making here is the same size as your other stitches. There you go, and you're all done. Can't see that join at all, which is exactly what you're aiming for. Now work away this yarn tail here to the back in the way you've done before, and work away any other random yarn tails you might still have left. And that's it, you're all done. Look at this beautiful blanket you made. These are the stitches we made in the last part and the border around it. But here are the popcorns and the trebles and the squares. And if you go right to the beginning, remember those very first stitches you learned? They seemed difficult at the time, but I'm sure at this point you can really master these stitches. And look at what you've made. Look how much you've learned. You've come so far, and you should be so proud of yourself, because this really is an achievement. I hope you enjoyed this project, but we're not finished yet. You'll have some yarn left, I'm sure, and next week I'll release a bonus pattern to use up all the leftovers from your TLC blanket. So I hope to see you back just one more time for that very last bonus pattern. See you next week.